It's time for the Newsmaker Show on AM 1480 WLEA. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Good morning and welcome to the Newsmaker Show for Friday, April 22nd, 2016. And this is John Lewis in with Dr. Robert Heineman. I'm filling in for Brian O'Neill today. And Dr. Bob, thank you for coming in.
My pleasure. We'll try to keep the string going here, John.
Yes.
You've been doing pretty well, I must say, but I'll be willing to step forward and comment.
Wonderful.
You're doing
thrilled
fine.
to have you back. We spoke last Friday in
Indeed,
person, and
indeed.
we also had you on the telephone Wednesday.
I believe so, yes.
With Derek Belinsky in reference to Tuesday night's New York State primaries.
Right.
Well, headlines coming today
Oh.
from Yahoo News and Drudge. The Republican establishment warms to Trump after big New York win. Those are the titles.
Well, New York establishment. Yes, I guess yesterday Chairman Ed Cox finally gave basically his endorsement or his blessings to Trump. They are not, to put it mildly, close or friends of any sort, but again, I think Cox recognizes the importance of keeping a halfway semblance of unity here because we've got some other races and such that are pretty important. And the fact is, Trump won resoundingly. So, the the results are the results. In politics, I think you've got to learn to move with them. So we'll see how that all plays out. Obviously, we have another, 5 primaries coming up next Tuesday.
Sure.
And although I think, again, Trump is going to do well in all 5 of those, the only one to watch on that one is the Democrat side. And it's possible Bernie will pick up 1 or 2. It's hard to tell.
With that being said, too, talking about Bernie versus Hillary here in upstate New York, Bernie pretty much swept the popular vote, or the counties, let's say.
Right. And I think the only one that he lost, Erie, Monroe, and I think Syracuse, but the one in
the 3 counties with the most populated
and
cities.
The inner city minority populations. But the one in Monroe County was really quite close. So in terms of upstate versus downstate, that's kind of the way the election went.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, Clinton's ground game is superior across the board. And nobody has ever thought that somehow Bernie was going to end up with the nomination. The problem that the Clintons have with Bernie, of course, is that he is costing him a lot of money in terms of having to fight off his challenge in the primaries, and he's forced Hillary into a number of strange statements, awkward positions, and things of that sort. Basically, in some ways, pretty embarrassing. One example, which of course is her refusal to release her speeches to Goldman Sachs, and what did you get, 650,000 or something like that from those speeches? And as Bernie says, it must be of Shakespearean quality, the money they're paying for those. So it's a continuing embarrassment. But the idea that she's not going to end up with more delegates than Bernie, I don't think that's going to happen. I think she will. So we can watch it, and who knows, maybe 1 or 2 states Bernie will pick up a win. And that, in some ways, is kind of winding down, I think. The Republican side, on the other hand, the whole question, as we all know, is whether Trump can pull in 1,237 delegates. And that's still up in the air. I mean, there's no question about that.
Speaking of Trump, on Thursday, Trump said he did not care who uses what bathroom in reference to the LGBTQ issues.
Right.
What do you think that helps Trump or hurts Trump?
No, I don't think he cares.
Okay.
I think his comments on the whether Harriet Tubman should be on the $20 bill is going to resonate, I think, a lot more broadly than the bathroom issue. Because, again, I don't think Trump, frankly, cares one way or another. I think the Harriet Tubman issue, obviously, he's concerned about the politically correct aspect of the whole thing, sticking Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill because it's the PC thing to do. I mean, I think the man has a point. On the other hand, Harriet Tubman is important figure in American politics, but I don't know where she was at the Battle of New Orleans. I'm sure she'd have done her bit if she'd have been there.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Heineman, on Wednesday, you said that Trump delegates were thinking or planning to give delegates to John Kasich. Do you see that happening?
Well, what I said was that they're concerned that the delegates that are pledged to Trump on the first ballot would jump ship on the second or third ballot and move maybe to Kasich or maybe to Cruz. But I think, and I've just met with some of the people involved with putting together these conferences, meetings in the various congressional districts, so that the meeting for this district will be in Corning at the Radisson Inn, I guess, May 11th, I believe it is. And they're trying to put together the officers, and the people who will be voting will be the committee people from the state committee people from the assembly. So, again, I think maybe we spell this out to our listening audience. Each state assembly district gets within a county gets 2 delegates. So Allegheny County, Joe Giglio has all of Allegheny County. There'll be a man and a woman from Allegheny County at the meeting. But again, Steuben County is divided up into 3 assembly districts, and so they'll have 6 people at the meeting. On the other hand, these are weighted votes. So just because you have 6 people there doesn't mean you're going to have 6 times, by any means, Allegheny County. So I think Allegheny County's 2 delegates to the meeting are worth half a vote.
Okay.
So that's the way they're going to do it. But what was interesting about the get-together was that nobody was quite sure how all this works.
Okay.
And again, it was that's one of the problems, I guess, number one, for having a primary that really means something. Mm-hmm. And number 2, apparently the Republicans, the state committee, changed the procedure since the last primary, and people aren't really quite sure how all this is going to work. One thing seems pretty certain, though, and that is that in almost all these districts, Trump is going to the delegates are going to have to vote for Trump on the first ballot, with the exception of New York County, or I guess it's New York County, which Kasich actually won. So he'll get those 3 delegates. And he's going to get 1 or 2 delegates from a couple of the other congressional districts. So he could end up with as many as 6 delegates, and Trump ended up with 89, I think. So we'll just see how it plays out. But right now, I think the Trump people in New York are being very careful that the people that they select are going to be Trump people all the way. Now, in some of these other states, obviously Cruz has slipped in and picked up delegates that the Trump people thought belonged to them. Again, Trump doesn't have much of a ground game, and the Cruz people have planned very carefully and have studied the regulations pretty carefully. I think Trump, frankly, may be an example of this 24/7 news approach that the media takes now, and they basically are craving something to fill in the time.
Sure.
I mean, there's only so much interesting news out there, and So how many two-headed calves and whatever can you put on the news? And so Trump realizes that the more outrageous the statements he makes, the more controversial he is in his statements. It's just free press time. The media is just scarfing that up. And the result is he's getting a lot of press time, and a lot of his comments resonate with people who are really very unhappy. So the media is doing the job for him, and it's been very effective for the man. Now, I don't know how that's going to affect future campaigns, frankly. If the future campaigns fall in this mode, that's probably not a good thing. But he clearly has seen the opening, and he's taken advantage of it. Yeah.
And very interesting to go back to the comment of you've been around delegates, and they're learning just as much as the
Yes.
common folk of
Yes.
how this is done. And it's amazing to me to hear that from you coming from New York State. Excuse me. I have a friend from Bradford, Pennsylvania, who moved out to Seattle and wrote this almost word for word from being an alternate delegate in Seattle last week, and said it seemed like people were figuring it out.
Right.
They were told that this might be 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and he said the whole day they were there, and he was never needed. But he said the whole problem being there all day was no one even know where to sit in the room.
Right, and you can imagine what the Republican convention will be like in
Sure.
Cleveland. Now, if Trump comes in with 1,400 delegates or something like that, why, they'll all have themselves a great time and a kickback, and that'll be it. And the party will come together, and I think Trump has the potential to be a pretty effective candidate. Although I think, to put it mildly, it'd be one of the more nastier campaigns
Sure.
in American history. But that doesn't bother the Donald, that's for sure. But I will have to see. In terms of the rules, again, I think the Trump people are a little slow on the uptake. But again, Kasich, I mean, that guy has almost no ground game at all, has almost no money, and he's just saying, although he is doing pretty well given that fact, but they certainly the Trump people are sort of like the Clinton people in that respect. They just wish Kasich would go away.
Sure.
But he's not going to. I'd hang around too if I were he.
Speaking of the Clintons, Hillary Clinton.
Oh, yeah.
The Boston Globe says that Hillary might pick up Massachusetts, U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
Do you think that will happen? And if it does, would that be a tough ticket to beat for the GOP?
Oh, you mean for the VP?
For the VP.
Yes. No, I think that'd be a very tough ticket.
Okay.
On the other hand, two women might be more, than the politically correct can handle at one time. But Elizabeth Warren, I think, fills in the Bernie void. She and Bernie, I think, are on the same page on most of their issues. And Elizabeth Warren is a very bright woman, a lot brighter than Hillary Clinton will ever be. So that would be a tough ticket. And the difference, the real problem, I think, would be that it may be a little too politically correct for a lot of people. But of course, the response is that up until this election, every ticket is, well, not every ticket has it been, but almost every ticket has been two males. Mm-hmm. You've had Mondale, and the lady from New York State was the VP candidate. So here and there you've had a female on the ticket. But these two, and Warren is, she's no one to mess around with. She can hold her own in debate, etc. Now, how that would work with Hillary and Hillary's crew is a whole nother story. And I don't think that might not be the easiest relationship between those two camps. But that would be a tough combo.
Great. Talking this morning with Dr. Robert Heineman on the Newsmaker Show. This is John Lewis filling in for Brian O'Neill. We'll be back after this with more of who Brian lovingly refers to as Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob, a former student of yours and a friend of mine, Mr. Reg Miller.
Oh, yes, the name's familiar.
Yes,
vaguely familiar.
Listening today, I'm sure, because he sent me some questions. So via email, I have 2 questions for you to end the show with.
Well, this might not be a good thing to have my former students sending in questions.
Right. He should know these, but opinion questions, I'm sure.
I see.
He'd be interested in knowing whether you think Trump's statements this morning are an attempt to pivot toward the general election and or capture moderate Republicans in the upcoming primaries.
Well, I think he definitely is. He has to move more and more to a more moderate stance, and I think Mr. Miller has a good point there, and that is it's a multi-step process. So first and foremost, Trump's goal was to dominate the stage and the media, which he has done. His second step, of course, is to win the nomination. And from that point on, then he's in a position to moderate and come up with specific solutions, policy positions, and things of that sort. And the one thing about Trump, and I guess there are a number of things you can say that are assets, but it seems to me the one that sticks out is he is willing to listen to able people, and he does have the money to hire good advisors. And so if he wins the nomination, I think that's the direction he'll go. And you will get, I think, some pretty specific and maybe some pretty innovative suggestions about how to deal with the Middle East and some of these other issues, something that goes beyond shutting off the immigration of Muslims from Syria and Iraq. And, I think he definitely is capable of doing that. But it's one step at a time. And at this point, his primary goal is to win the nomination. Now, it may be by moderating a little bit, he thinks he might pick up more delegates in either of the states. I don't think so. I think he's going to sweep pretty much across the board.
Okay.
He doesn't have to worry about that so much. The problem is these states are not winner take all. So Cruz and some, pick up a few votes here and there. So
now Reg writes that this could be too technical for this show, but he is interested in knowing, on SCOTUS precedent, whether you think the Iran bank ruling represents a dramatic expansion of Congress's ability to essentially wade in ongoing disputes.
Well, I think he's talking about the right of the standing of American citizens to sue Iran for terrorist activities and other things. And I think I'll pretty much ignore that question, which I often did with Mr. Miller in class.
Sure.
But I do think the Saudi situation is really quite interesting.
Yes, please.
And the campaign and all that talk, we're losing track of what's going on in other areas that are quite important. And the Saudis, of course, are very unhappy because Congress, I think, is passing legislation allowing Americans to sue the Saudis for 911, which both Hillary and Bernie supported, and President Obama has vowed to veto. But what's interesting about that is the Saudis, as part of that, have threatened to withdraw investment in the United States as a kind of a penalty. Well, I think the Saudis got that backwards. They can withdraw all the investment they want. They're only hurting themselves. They don't understand that they are not running the show anymore, as opposed to the tail wagging the dog. I think now they're on the tail end of the tail, and the idea that somehow they're going to push us around, I think they have misconceived
right.
the international situation today, and I think the Obama administration is pointing that out to them pretty clearly. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But they're desperately trying to find some way to compensate for their loss of oil revenue and the fact that their position internationally is in the oil area is dropping off dramatically. And I think they're in serious trouble on that point. And so I think that's something we should be watching pretty closely.
Sure. Great comments, and thank you for taking it in that direction,
Well,
actually.
thank Mr. Miller for his efforts, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reg, thank you for listening. Thank you all for listening to the Newsmaker Show. This is John Lewis filling in for Brian O'Neill, and very happy to be talking today with Dr. Robert Heineman from Alfred University. Dr. Heineman, our normal Friday guest, thank you for joining us.
I wouldn't call myself normal, but I'll try. Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Okay.